Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle Podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And today, Andrew Cort. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I forgot to ask you where you're located. I always ask.
I'm in the very famous Woodstock, New York.
Oh, famous because it's the Woodstock, or?
It's the Woodstock from the festival in '69. Yeah.
I have to brag immediately that my uncle was one of the carpenters who built the stage. So immediately,
Oh, yeah?
straight. It's like, I must say. Wonderful. All right. Welcome. I always, at the beginning, ask my guests if they're so kind to make a small self-introduction, a little bit of a background, whatever comes to mind, so that the people who don't know you yet get a bit to know your background.
Okay, well, I have a long, very eclectic background. I think I might have sent you that information. I've been kind of led around by the nose by my soul for all these years to just keep doing different things. But I started out in the healing arts, becoming a chiropractor back in 1980 and practicing in Manhattan for 10 years, New York City. I then went through a whole number of other things for many years, which I won't bore your audience with right now. But about 7 or 8 years ago, I went back into the healing arts. And so I'm seeing patients again. I don't practice chiropractic per se, but my healing work has evolved as we all have. And now is much more involved with energy work and cranial work and deep relaxation work to allow the body to let in healing forces. And once I go through a good bit of time with that, and I spend a lot of time with my patients, we delve into a hypnotic state and into the psyche to look for and try to end the attachment to limiting beliefs that are sabotaging them, and then move on to helping them manifest the kind of life they want to have. More health, more joy, more abundance, more love, whatever it is that they're looking for. And for the most part, we find ways to block it. So all my work, energetic-wise in the body and psychic work in the subconscious, is to unblock and de-hypnotize people.
Wow. So,
and I'm the author of a number of books, and my recent one is on these very subjects. It's called Create Yourself Anew, From Above Down. And it's about shifting your mindset, getting rid of the blockages, and then using all the tools that help manifest the life you want, affirmations, visualizations, etc.
I guess this will be a light conversation. But before we of course come to your work, your books, and all of this, maybe a very trivial question, because you said you've been working as a chiropractic in the 80s in Manhattan, so the good old times, basically, when the money was flowing like milk and honey. But my first very simple question, do you actually see the body or pain or the symptoms that they're always the same, or do you see different times create different manifestations in the problem, that our new life has created different issues than the ones from the 80s? Do you see differences, or?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes and no. Some things never change. People injure themselves and aches and pains and get older and don't take care of themselves and have aches and pains and illnesses. That doesn't change. Right now, so many people need the kind of work I and many others do because of the enormous stress and tension that so many of us are living with. And if you want to get yourself sick, stick with tension and stress. That will do it. That's underlying just about everything. Even when there are other factors, germs, traumas, accidents, and so forth, poor nutrition, all kinds of factors. But to me, the deepest one is a psychological response to stress. And stress has, I think, increased in recent years.
My point was simply because the cliche, like Manhattan is the epicenter of stress at the time of the 80s, that's sort of cliche talking. And I was simply wondering, that simple observation, I know that life was slower back then. I'm old enough to remember the 80s. And I know that 3 people did the job that 1 person is doing it today. So it is a fact in many professions that the speed and the stress level has increased dramatically. So I was kind of wondering if now the average Joe has come to the stress level that some good old Manhattan people used to have in the 80s. So if we're all now basically in Manhattan, more or less.
Yeah.
That is what I was.
Yeah, more or less. And
So,
I was young in the 80s.
ah,
And most of my clients were young. And given the kind of physical healing work I did with chiropractic and some muscle balancing work and stuff, I saw a lot of young people who were dancers and actors and actresses and not terribly unhealthy and not terribly stressed. Unless they'd been to a bunch of auditions and got rejected over and over again, they'd be
I
unhappy.
see.
But not the kind of stress I see today where life is just desperate and overwhelming for so many people.
Right. Now you see stress, you talk about blockages a lot. So let's move further. Let's move to the here and now. So people are under, I think we can say that our society is under chronic stress. I think that's the first thing we most probably can say quite relaxed.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and I mean, the stress factors most probably is like much faster pace of life, I guess is one of the elements. Then social media, the scrolling and all that overflooding of information, I guess is another factor. Then basically also the loss of family, friends, the social elements that we had much more time to socialize. And socialize, as we all know, reduces stress if it's done well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And of course, now so many people are plugged into machineries all the time, not socializing in real life with a real living person. I remember maybe 15, 20 years ago. Sorry.
Doctor, I'm breaking you. Could you maybe put the finger on it? What's the difference between meeting someone in real world and meeting someone online? Could you put some factors?
Online, you can feel a lot safer expressing negativity, dislike, or anger, or any unpleasant emotions, because that person is thousands of miles away, perhaps, and doesn't know where you live and doesn't know your name and is nothing personal. And they can just hang up, or you can just hang up the machine that you're talking on and have no real repercussions. So I think people can express a lot more negativity. I think another factor is that when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, we had 3 television channels. And if you watched the news on the different channels, they pretty much covered the same thing. And they were reasonably objective, just telling you the news. Now you have thousands of television stations, cable stations, and news and infotainment stations bombarding us with angry messages about us against them and my side versus your side. And I think that means people start losing their willingness and ability to think and decide things for themselves because they're being bombarded with what you should believe and what you should be doing and who your friends really are and who you should be enemies with. And I think that increases a lot of negativity, a lot of stress, a lot of discomfort in life, and a lot of confusion. And people really don't know who they are. It's always a question, who am I? But I think even the basic answers that we used to give, I'm this name and I do this work and this is what I'm interested in, even that has like shifted into a lot more negativity and discomfort. And people are angry and people are discouraged and people are fearful. You know, people are worried and fearful more than I remember people in the 60s being. We were hopeful in the late 60s. I remember that. I was part of that. It was very hopeful. And some of our wishes came true, and certainly not all of them. And these days, the enmity between people and the lack of personal contact, the lack of touch. You know, they say that when you hug someone for at least 20 seconds, you get all this wonderful chemical changes in your body. Now we don't hug people for even 2 seconds because they're on a screen. So there's just so many factors, I guess. I'm sure I'm just touching the surface.
For sure. Because that's one of the questions I've been asking a lot of people, because I always think that there's the body chemistry or the things that in the holistic world or whatever that people, when they're in the same room, that they exchange all of these energies knowingly, unknowingly, and it has a healing factor.
Yeah.
And we know that synchronicity is happening with breathing and all of this. I mean, there's tons of research about groups been done, especially in the 80s and 90s, about all that in a group people harmonize and synchronize, stuff like that. And I always wondered, ask so many people if they think that you can create this kind of synchronicity online. The young people, the new generation are absolutely certain that you can get the same kind of energetic exchange online than you can get live, but I remain skeptical.
I'm somewhat skeptical too, and most of my work has always been in person. And unlike the changes that have taken place in the medical profession throughout my life, where now you go into a doctor and he or she will sit down in front of a computer, ask you some questions, type things in, maybe give you a prescription and leave, and never touch you, and maybe never even look in your eyes and connect you at all, because they're so busy. And I'm not saying I'm angry or blame them. It's a mess, what's happened. But in holistic professions like chiropractic and the kind of work that I do today, I touch people, and I think that's very, very important. I sit quietly and speak with them and try to truly listen. And I spend a long time with people. I spend an hour and a half, sometimes more, with a patient, just really being with them. And I think that in itself is a great value above and beyond. If you only believe that medicine can help you and only a medical doctor can help you with a drug, you're going to miss out on all that. And I'm not saying don't do that, but do both. Medicine certainly has its place and its power and wonderful in so many ways. But it's also lacking in many ways, and you want to kind of mix it up a bit and have all of that. Now, on the other hand, I have recently started working with people on Zoom. And it took me a while to get over my own skepticism and my own feeling that was just missing too much. And I think it may be missing something, certainly, when I'm online with a patient rather than having my hands on their back and shoulders. But one of the things I talk about in my recent book is how ultimately there is no such thing as space and time. It's all illusion. And I had to confront my own understanding that, well, if there's no such thing as space, there's no such thing as distance, and there's really no such thing as distance healing, because there's just healing. And if I can connect with people and do what's most important, which has never been my touch, what's most important is their getting into and grounding within and feeling the sensations within their body and being aware of their physical being and grounding themselves in their physical being. And we can still do that. And I think that's maybe lacking something in the human touch factor, but I no longer think it's lacking too much. I think it's still useful, and given the people all over the world who are on their computers all day and maybe don't have someone to work with personally, I think it's valuable. I think it's very valuable.
Now you're saying the exact same thing like my super hip world traveler, 20-something spiritual healer. And that's exactly the answer I get from them. Now I'm full circle. Nothing to cling on. If I lost you, I lost everything. Maybe it's a good moment to just a little bit talk about the new book. If you'd be so kind, just give us a couple of words, and I'm sure we'll have some questions after it to move further in this endeavor.
Okay. The book is called Create Yourself Anew from Above Down. The very first chapter is about shifting your mindset, because that always comes first. It's always what's in your mind that is blocking you or encouraging you or dragging you forward or dragging you backward. It's your subconscious beliefs and your negativity or positivity in your mind. You really need to shift your mindset to a positive, healthy mindset. Now, the particular mindset change that I talk about, which is why the book is called Create Yourself Anew from Above Down, is that I spend a very long first chapter, helping people become aware that you are a magnificent, sacred, perfect as you are, extraordinary and powerful being, and part of the divine all. And that divine all, and I comfortably use the word God, but I'm not talking about some external being who lives in the sky and wants to get even with me if I'm naughty. I'm talking about God as this presence of divine sacred oneness that we're all part of. When you stand there, you're a creator. And you can take the power you have from your being such an extraordinary, magnificent part of this divine sacred universe and use that power to create the life you want. As opposed to working at this day-to-day level and constantly and frantically trying to fix everything you think is broken and wrong. Trying to fix everything that you don't like and change everything you don't like and do this and do that. And well, that didn't work. Let's do this and do that. And never taking a stance in, I can stand above all this. I can see all that's happening as part of reality. I can appreciate it. I can appreciate all I've learned from it. If I've learned from it, I can appreciate the experience it's given me, because experience and awareness of life is a wonderful thing. And I can let go of my judgment of it from above. Once I have people shifted into that place in their being, coming from their highest place in their inner guidance and their highest being self with a capital S. The next piece is to get rid of all the negative things that are blocking what you want. So the next couple of chapters are about letting go of limiting beliefs and how to do it. Letting go of negative programs and how to do that. And then once all that debris is cleared away, then I talk about affirmations and visualizations and prayer and gratitude journals and practicing happiness, learning to be creative and not reactive to everything, and all the steps that you'll hear in many manifestation books. But there are more or less powerful ways of using them. And the most powerful, or the first powerful way, in my opinion, is first get rid of all that debris that's in the way. If you've got a voice inside you saying, you're always going to be poor, you're always going to be poor, and it's been saying that since you were 5 years old, all day long, if you now spend 2 or 3 hours saying, I am wealthy, who's going to win that argument? It's that voice that's been there forever and ever. You really have to shift that out of there and then repeat and repeat and repeat until you convince yourself of what you want to change and who you wish to become, what you wish to be. So there's a lot of nuance in all that work and the sequence of the work. And then the last 3 chapters are on the 3 things that I think most people are concerned with: shifting into a life of abundance, shifting into a life of radiant health, and shifting into a life of more and more love. That's the book.
And then I think we all need to read it. That's for certain.
Oh, I think so too. Thank you for saying that.
And that's an easy sell, right? Let me just ask you, the people you're working with today, mainly, you have different age groups, males, females, young, old, which background, or is it just everybody?
I will see everybody, anybody. I mostly, but not exclusively, work with older people. Now, I'm 74. And these cute little 22-year-old dancers aren't coming to me to get them ready for the show tonight. But
better or worse, for better or worse.
Yeah. So I more or less deal with older people, which is good because my work has shifted from just dealing with an injury to dealing with your overall health and well-being. And that's more of what's needed with people as we get older. I think I see more women than men, but not many more. And mostly if I see like young teenagers, it's usually mom brings her in. Not coming on their own anymore.
Because the question why I asked this simply was because, as you said, the 22-year-old jumping around has a different position and questions and struggles in life than when one is the 70 or the 40s. So each and every decade basically has its own very individual, so ruffle to clear and ruffle to move on. So that's why I was interested from which state of mind you're presenting this kind of a work.
I wouldn't say that I'm seeing many elderly people much older than me, but I certainly see mostly people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s.
So basically they're going towards pension. They are already starting with the pension. They have both eyes towards the pension. And this is then the big shift. I guess we don't need to go through the whole life experiences, but getting children or whatever, all these little big moments that put us on a different trajectory. And pension is one where we come for full steep and 100% into the big unknown. This is when usually people start to look at and do this inner work. That's one of the big groups of inner workers are newly pensionists, right?
Yes, it's an ancient practice that people do their householding work and then they do their spiritual work when the kids are grown up and they're done. It's a sequence that makes sense. But young people also do spiritual work. And older people sometimes have resistance because they never have before. But overall, the people who are attracted and come to see me are people who are still alive. And they know their life isn't everything they want it to be, inside or externally. And they want to heal on all their levels, and they want to transform their lives and make a miraculous life rather than a nightmare.
A couple of times mentioned abundance and financial prosperity and stuff like that. So that's why I was so interested in this question, because one always imagined that people, or like how the world should be, that in this stage of your life, that is no issue any longer. You should have already provided and you should have worked all your life and you should look towards a decent pension and things like that. You should be settled, but even that rules are not really applying any longer.
Yes, I think what you just described was absolutely descriptive of my father's generation and not so much of mine. People are still struggling to make ends meet. They're worried about their pension these days. They're worried about their Social Security these days. They're worried about the fact that the prices of everything is going up all the time these days. And people they believe in scarcity. There's not enough, which is not accurate, but people believe in that. It seems that way in a lot of the aspects of their day-to-day living. And I certainly see people who are not the least bit worried about finances, but I see many people who are, that it just hasn't worked out the way they thought it would. And now people are still working. I'm 74, I'm still working.
Yeah, but also there are a lot of people who are healthy 74, and it fills them with horror to sit at home and be a pensionist. So there's more and more people who just don't want it because they maybe want work-life balance. They maybe know better how to protect themselves, organize the things so this is more convenient. But just being uselessly at home is a horror for a lot of people in that age bracket.
Yeah, it is. As I guess especially so for people who have worked since they were teenagers and they've never not done that. And now they don't know what to do with themselves. And that problem is going to increase, I think, with the growth and advancement of AI and robots taking over the work lives of not only older pensioners, but everybody. And everybody's going to be sitting around wondering, what do I do with my days? What do I do with my time? It's certainly worse now for older people, but I think that's going to be a bigger and bigger problem for everyone. And it has a positive possibility to it, because what you can do with your life could be to find something to just keep you busy, or it could be to really work on yourself and find ways to completely shift your life and make things wonderful and be creative and paint and become a musician, start meditating, start finding new spiritual meaning in your life and together with your family, new spiritual meaning, new things to do. That I think is hopefully where we will eventually head. But I think there's probably going to be a settling point we have to get through, where everyone is going to feel poor and dejected and not know what to do with their lives, and have to really change civilization. And I'm hopeful that, although I think we'll go through difficult times for sure, I think we will get to a really wonderful place of human life on this planet.
That's always a nice thing to say. If we all together would wish it, it would most definitely come true.
Yes.
And how beautiful you brought me to the next question. The second chapter of your book, the visualizations and all of these techniques that you, after you've done the inner work, the work that you did, the transitional work where you, what you want to become. This is an interesting one because there's a lot of people, I forget the terminology, but neuroscience, coach or whatnot. It's a very popular thing right now happening on the market. And they're all about this brain rewiring, brain reconditioning, and so on and so forth. And basically, I always say it's fake it until you make it come to life. So you reach that person to be and you really believe and work on it. Could you give us your explanation? Why do you think that this actually works?
Whatever you believe you are going to get in the world is what you get. Your beliefs create your vibration. They're behind your thoughts and emotions and actions, and they create your overall vibration. Vibrations resonate, and I don't think it's anything like woo science to notice, as people like Einstein noticed, that if you believe this is a magnificent, wonderful world full of delightful miracles, wonderful things are going to come into your life. And if you believe that this is a horrible, miserable, terrible life and bad things are going to happen all the time, they will. This was part of my journey that got me into the place I'm in with my life now, is learning that difference. I had a lot of terrible health issues when I was in my 20s and beyond. I used that as an excuse, not a bad one. When I was 23, I had such bad arthritis, I was told by a medical doctor at Syracuse Upstate Medical Center that I would probably be bedridden within a year. Pretty deep, serious stuff. I was just 23 years old. And no, that never happened. But being in a state of, aches and pains and such bad health, I use that as an excuse to also explain why I can't really seem to make any money. One, it's very hard to work, including when I was practicing chiropractic in the 80s, very physical work. It became very hard to work, and that's why after 10 years, I gave it up for many years. Money was always an issue, and when you're physically ill and you don't have any money, women aren't real thrilled with getting to know you. So my love and relationship part of my life was also done. You put that all together, I was pretty upset and gloomy and very unhappy for years and years. And one day, in the course of my own spiritual thinking evolution, I started pondering the idea, which was new to me, that maybe the purpose of being here isn't to struggle and overcome obstacles and learn to become what you're supposed to be and fight the good fight. And maybe the real purpose in being here is to relax and enjoy it and love and appreciate this incredible miracle of existence. If that were true, I certainly wasn't a very spiritual person at that time in my life, because I was just the opposite of that. And then I asked myself a question that I had been aware of as a question in the past, but I had never embraced it or given it any credence, because I didn't want to, of course. But the question that I finally did ask myself was, what if all these negative, terrible things in my life are not making me sick and unhappy at all? What if my being in a miserable, gloomy, unhappy mood is causing all these things to happen? And it wasn't, I realized pretty quickly, a question of blame. It was a question of possible power. Have I created all of this? And if so, can I create something different? And that's where my journey into this latter part of my life began. And my gosh, everything is so much better. Life is so much better. in terms of money, in terms of relationships, and my health. I feel healthier now than I have since I was a teenager. And that's pretty good for 74. I mean, genuinely, I feel fantastic after many years of feeling horrible. So I know making this shift and doing these practices works. I also know it doesn't work in 2 days. It's not that kind of a miracle. It doesn't work without changing yourself. It's not changing the world. You really have to be willing to change yourself. And that begins with observing yourself and seeing what's going on. What is this me that talks to myself all day long? Seeing all of that, bringing all of that up into the light of consciousness. Because consciousness is light, and negative things don't like light. So it's not about fighting against the negativity, because what you resist persists, as Carl Jung and many others have told us. It's not about fighting against it, because that just gives it energy and strength and makes it worse. It's about what Socrates said thousands of years ago. Observe yourself. Just see yourself without judgment. See all this stuff, bring it up into consciousness, be aware of it without judgment. And then grace washes it away. You don't do it. The higher forces that you're inviting into your life take care of things like that. Then you move on, and I believe you can actually rewire yourself with affirmations and visualizations and just changing your point of view and working for a good while.
I'm completely with you, but I also see the determination, the hard work it takes to do such a program. It really have to have a strong starting point. That is my personal observation, and you work with so many more patients than I. But I always see that people really need the traumatic event usually, or the big crazy diagnosis or whatever, or maybe the big divorce or whatever it is. People have these crazy moments that gives them the boost and the energy to take up such a mountain of hard work.
Yes, and those kinds of life events definitely force people into a mentality where they have shifted or they're willing to shift and make some real changes and transform. In addition to those kinds of dramatic moments, there's also the exhaustion. I can't deal with this anymore. I have to change something and start over.
Is that one of the new things when we look back to the 80s, that this kind of enormous mental exhaustion, I can't remember from back when. Maybe I was young, but still looking around people, I worked with a lot of people at the time, this kind of a enormous mental exhaustion, I can't remember it. Can you?
I don't remember it being common. As I say, I grew up in the 50s and early 60s. I grew up in the Leave It to Beaver generation. Everything was just dandy. And then the late 60s and all that positive and hope that we were going to save the world. And then the disappointments that followed. So, but I wouldn't say that I've seen that nearly as much as I see the shifts occurring when people have some dramatic thing that just, you got to change now because you can't be this way anymore. It's over. Sometimes you can come to that decision yourself. People on alcoholics and drug addicts often come to that on their own. It's not a dramatic thing. It's I just have to be done with this final conclusion. There was a wonderful scene in the movie you probably have seen and remember, An Officer and a Gentleman, with Richard Gere as a very bratty, obnoxious young guy who wants to become a pilot. And he's in this officer candidate program. And the drill sergeant, Louis Gossett, was wonderful, is this tough-ass drill sergeant, doesn't like him because he shouldn't be there. He's not doing it because he loves America or because he's strong. He's just really a brat. And he tries to get him to leave. And there's a point in this story where, I won't get into all of it, but let's say it concludes with Richard Gere is lying in the mud after an exhausting weekend where the drill sergeant has been pushing him and pushing him. forcing him to exhaust himself and do all this work and just keep going on and trying to make him miserable enough that he'll quit. And he's lying there in the mud. And the drill sergeant finally has had enough. He says, look, all right, if you're not going to drop out of this, I'm going to get you out of here anyway. I'm going to do it. And Richard Gere starts screaming at him, don't you do that. Don't you do that. And Gossett asks him, why? And he says, I got nowhere else to go. And from that moment, he starts becoming an officer and a gentleman, and he transforms his life. I thought it was a magnificent symbol of getting to that point where I had nowhere else to go. Whether it's a divorce or years of addiction or just years of being gloomy, I can't go back there anymore. I have to go forward.
And that's when you start working with you. This is the people that you see. Basically, that's the people you're helping, guiding them through the process.
Yeah.
So we said that these people are a little bit older. They have these moments. And now we talk about the last chapter in the book, when we're basically already touching the divine and contributing to the overall light. How can you a little bit describe this more in like real world applications to be a better father, a better husband, a better human, doing community work, or is it just an inner state that you describe? So I was also just wondering between the inside, outside elements, if your book touches these questions.
It does. The first chapter is, I guess the subtitle is The Oneness of Creation. So I spend a lot of time in that first chapter giving reasons to shift your understanding to the ancient wisdom that is also in many ways being verified by quantum physicists and modern science, that everything in this universe is interconnected and really one giant thing. So that, for instance, one way to view the world is that it's this magnificent, this world, that as we live in this physical time-space reality, is this magnificent tapestry of vibrations. And the tapestry is complete, but within the tapestry, the vibrations are moving and everything's changing. And some of those vibrations slow down and they become people or things, and some of those vibrations are different kinds of energy, and everything ultimately is vibration. And this, again, isn't just woo-woo science. Any good chemist or physicist will get to agreeing, yes, everything vibrates and everything really is fundamentally vibration. And vibrations move around and resonate and attract each other and repel each other. But everything is oneness inside there, including this multiplicity that we see of me and you and him and her and that chair and that table and that country and all this separation, which ultimately is an illusion of the ego mind. It's not ultimately the truth of reality. Or at least let's say both are true. You are part of the oneness and you're an individual. But as an individual, the individual you're talking to is also you. Because we really are all one. And we're all expressing different pieces and parts of that oneness all the time. The reason I'm going through this, maybe I'm being too wordy, is if I hurt you, I'm hurting me. If I cause you problems, I'm the problem and I'm causing me problems. If I send out a lot of negativity, that's going to resonate and come back to me. And I can't do anything in this world harmful if I really recognize that I'm only harming me. Now that's a shift in mentality that's hard to get to.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was not supposed to make a joke, and I never make jokes about politics. But I just wanted to say, I don't think you work as a government advisor right now.
No.
I never make those jokes, but it was so tempting. Yeah. Sorry, I broke you. I apologize.
I understand, and that's part of the stress of life these days. is all of that's going on.
I'm completely
we can't-
unpolitical, but it was just so perfect.
Yeah. We won't be able to save civilization until we realize that everyone and everything is one, and we are all the same overarching sacred being, divided up into these individual pieces of the divine sacred being. It's all one, like an amoeba breaking into two pieces. They're still part of the one. Over here, one's over there, but they're still this. They're still the one. I want to say about humor. My work is very serious, and sometimes I get a little too serious. But some people tell me my best quality is my sense of humor. One of the things I do with patients these days when we're dealing with limiting beliefs, I stole from Harry Potter. I stole from Lupin teaching the kids how to deal with a boggart. And the boggart is this being that takes on whatever you fear the most and scares the hell out of you. And he teaches them how to deal with it. And the way you deal with it is you imagine it absurd and ridiculous. Yes. Like one of the kids is terrified of Professor Snape, so he imagines Snape dressed in his grandmother's dress and her bonnet and her purse. Like totally ridiculous. And when turn what you're most afraid of into something totally absurd, and then you point your wand at it and say the spell ridiculous, and it breaks up and everyone laughs. I've taken that. I thought there was a wonderful truth in there. So I sometimes, at least, when I'm working with patients and they bring up some negative belief, some fear, or some thing that they're just totally overwhelmed by that seems to be harming their happiness and their ability to move forward, I have them try to personify it. Take that voice that's saying those things to you and attach it to a body that's talking to you, saying those things, and now turn that body into a clown and see the painted eyes and the bozo's hair and the big floppy shoes that it's tripping over, and make it totally ridiculous and laugh at it. And just realizing this voice that's telling you this lie all your life, it's a silly, ridiculous lie, and just laugh at it as a way to release it.
Absolutely. It's a very good developed technique and very effective.
Very effective, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
People let go of their seriousness as I let go of mine.
Sorry, I most probably broke you up. That's why we lost track on my original question. If at the last chapter of the book, basically, if you talk also to an inward-outward work, if you talk about volunteering and community work, or simply the manifesting this new me as a father, as a husband, as a wife, are you mainly focused on the inner work and you stay within, or you also reflect on bringing then this stuff into the world, this new, better self?
They're not different to me, ultimately. I mean, the inner work is part of the world, and your vibrations are creating the reality around you. But I think more specifically to your question, which I do understand, is what I think we're trying to do here in this experience of being individuals within the oneness. Our experience of an individual in this day-to-day life is to individuate and become unique and become special, and, in a word, to remember who and what you are and to become who you wish to be. Mm-hmm. So now, if going out and volunteering expresses who you wish to be and who you are, do it. Mm-hmm. If it feels like a task that you really don't want to do, you're too tired, or you don't like those people anyway, don't do it if it's not expressing you. But hopefully, as you become more and more aware of the oneness of everyone and everything, it's the basis of compassion and understanding, to understand that everyone who I'm affecting me because they are me. And we are one, and I can't treat them badly and get away with it because I'm treating me badly. And it's not expressing the best of who I choose to be, who I remember I really am, or who I want to become. But if there are people who, to do that, choose to live a totally monastic life. And there are people who, to do that, choose to live a totally outgoing, taking care of everyone kind of life. And they're all fine either way if it's expressing who you really are and who you're choosing to become. Then everything works for you and everything works for the people around you.
Okay. It's definitely an interesting ending, and most probably looking at the book and the journey your book goes, it is the most logic ending for that what you're trying to achieve and trying to help people, because that is your motivation, to help people, to give them the tools to overcome from where they are, to find a better, peaceful, harmonious and healthy and happy self. So it's clear that this is your main focus as a doctor. The patient in front of you makes absolute sense.
Can I mention my website? Can I do that?
Anyway, everything is going down here, all the information, but of course you can.
Okay.
Please go ahead if you feel like it.
Well, my website's easy enough to find. It's just andrewcort.com. And I tell people that Cort is not spelled with the letter U. It's C-O-R-T, andrewcort.com. If you go to my website, you can find out much more about me, much more about the work that I do, how to contact me. I'm very transparent. My email and phone number are there. And all about all my books, including the newest one. And I'm working on an online course, which I hope will be ready by the fall. But if you sign my mailing list, which is on my website, in the top of the website, you'll be one of the first to know as soon as it's ready. And when you subscribe to the mailing list, I send you a copy of a pamphlet, a very short book, a pamphlet that I wrote a few years ago. It's called The Real Cause of Pain and Sickness and What You Can Do About It. And it's full of information, very powerful for self-healing and understanding your own growth. And that's free when you subscribe to the email list. And you can also find me on Facebook and TikTok and other places, but the website is my favorite.
Of course. Would you like to spill the beans in one sentence, the program you're working on, or it's top secret still?
It's not top secret. It's actually just the same work we've been talking about. Module 1 is about shifting your mindset. Module 2 is about getting rid of limiting beliefs. And then there's a module with all the separate pieces of how to restructure your inner life. And then focusing on abundance, love, and health at the end.
If we maybe would have said top secret, people would have subscribed more to the newsletter.
Okay, I take that back. You can't know anything about it.
Except if you subscribe. All right. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Andrew, thank you so very much.
Thanks. It's been really nice.